Macroeconomics is the study of economy as a whole and the interaction of the various variables which are present in the economy. Variables will include aggregate output, employment, unemployment, inflation, interest rates, exchange rates and economic growth. For example, inflation rates and interest, how are they related? Now, inflation is when the circulation of money is in excess in the market. The value of money falls down a little bit. Now, how do you control it through inflation? Through interest rate. You can, if you probably, let's say right now, if your fixed deposit is at the rate of 6%, right? Now, let's say you suddenly change the deposit rates and you bring it up to an 8.5%. What would you do? Probably you would take in all your surplus money and park it in this fixed deposit, which will again lead to shrinkage of the paper money available in the market, which in turn will affect inflation. Thus, all these variables, output, employment, unemployment, exchange rates, inflation, growth rate, GDP, etc. are all interrelated and they are all mutually reinforcing. Now, macroeconomics is a policy-oriented topic. You will have fiscal policy and you will also have to understand the monetary policy here. The effect of certain government policies, whether government, central bank should intervene or not intervene in the foreign exchange market is, and how these variables will behave in a particular fashion is what we'll try and understand. A flow of variable measure a value per unit of time. For example, GDP of a country will be calculated in a time series framework. For example, a GDP will be a time limited phenomena. A GDP for a quarter, a GDP biannually, a GDP per year and so on and so forth. So for example, if I have to assume that we are facing a depression, how will we arrive at that? If the economy is going in a depression or if the economy is going in a downturn, how will you arrive at that? When consecutively 2 quarters of your GDP will show negative growth, then you can assume safely for that particular time period that the economy is going into depression. So a stock, it's simply like a trading stock, So for example, when you talk about a particular stock or an asset, it's with relation to the time frame. So for example, in the BSE exchange, at so and so date and time, a stock is valued at XYZ rupees. The same phenomena happens with GDP. So for a particular country, for a particular time period, the GDP is comparable. Now, to understand GDP, we also need to understand the personal income and disposable income variables. Now, what is personal income? Personal income is the total income received by people from all sources. It could be rental, it could be salary, it could be interest income, etc. And disposable income means personal income less tax and the other payments, whatever payouts that you're making. There are certain frequently used terms which we'll be using throughout the presentation to understand these concepts better. One is output, income and expenditure. Output, as the word suggests, is the product. It's the value of output of the entire economy. Income is the sum of incomes of all factors of production, labor, capital, land. Here we are not considering technology as a factor in terms of monetary income, but labor, land and capital would be the input factors here which are employed in the economy. Then is expenditure, which is the sum of all expenditures in the economy of final goods and services. We also need to understand the difference between domestic and national. When we say domestic, domestic is all economic activities taking place within the country, which is the geographic confines of one particular nation. And when you say national economy, all activities of the residents of the country, regardless of where the activities take place. So for example, if an NRI, if an Indian origin NRI is earning a particular remittance in, let's say, Brazil or even a Belgium or whichever other country or a Japan, it will still be included in national economy, but it will not be calculated in domestic economy. Then we also need to understand gross and net. Gross means which is measured before deducting depreciation of assets used in the production process. Net means after deducting the depreciation of assets in the production process. Market price and factor cost. Market prices paid by the purchaser, including the effects of indirect taxes and subsidies. Factor cost is effects of indirect taxes and subsidies are removed, which are subtracted in and then adding subsidies.